A 67-year-old man with dreadlocks and blonde hair recently sold 550 of his most cherished classic cars, which he had collected for a lifetime. The events that transpired thereafter shocked even him. In his decision to part ways with metal and machines, Mike Hall, once dubbed Canada's most passionate car hoarder, left behind decades of memories, put his hard-earned fortune at risk, and abandoned the identity he had worked so hard to build for himself. What happens when a man's entire life's labor vanishes in the span of a weekend? This is the tale of Mike Hall, a once ordinary man who was born on February 4, 1958, in St. Bonaventure, Manitoba, Canada, and whose extraordinary imagination made him famous. Yet, his greatest love affair was the act of letting go. Mike couldn't get enough of. In his childhood, he was always disassembling things, bikes, radios, lawnmowers, to figure out how they worked. He wasn't content to simply fix them. He wanted to know how they worked. Unfortunately, he never found a school that fit him. He was more interested in gears, tools, and engines, a passion that would lead him far, but nobody could have predicted how he would get there. Instead of attending university, Mike worked, though not in. He started out in an office and worked his way up to a profession that involved working on precarious slopes to prevent rock slides. This was an extremely dangerous line of work. Rock works at Chimera Springs, climbing stone mountain walls, and even using controlled explosions to make hillsides and highways safer was dirty, cold work for Mike. Work that was both physically demanding and mentally taxing. A slip-up could have resulted in Mike's demise. Despite this, he relished the opportunity to put his skills in science, strength, and survival to good use, and he made a respectable living wage. Mike obtained automobiles. Old, rusted, forgotten cars were like gold to Mike, who wasn't a collector in the slightest. More conventional rather than amassing pricey models for the sake of display, Mike set out to preserve their histories. As the years went by, he acquired hundreds of vintage cars, which he dutifully housed on a sprawling 26 acres of land in Tappan, British Columbia. The location, which came to be known as Rust Valley, was ideal for the preservation of cars spanning the 1920s to the 1970s. Every one of those cars had a story, and Mike could tell you that story as he walked through that field. He could tell you where he had gotten each one, what it needed, and even the name of the person who sold it to him. There were rows upon rows of them, with moss covering their roofs and grass surrounding their wheels. Their original color was barely visible beneath the rust, but Mike didn't see wrecks. He saw history. At first, people thought Mike was crazy for buying hundreds of broken cars and then abandoning them outside the homes of friends, neighbors, and even family. His memory for vehicles was almost photographic. He once joked, "I can't remember where I parked my truck, but I can tell you the compression ratio of a 1968 Dodge Dart." Someone warned him it was too much, but Mike didn't care because he was determined to fix them all. He saw himself as a preservationist, someone who would save artifacts from the past from oblivion. For years, he worked quietly, slowly, fixing cars, adding to his collection, and investing everything he had into the land and his dream. However, everything changed when a film crew showed up. Observe the grounds, his unique appearance, long blonde dreadlocks, bright blue eyes, and the kind of voice that made you want to listen, was captivating, but it was when they saw his land filled with vintage cars that they knew they had found something special. He had previously appeared on the show Highway Through Hell doing rescue work. A special was born, and Rust Valley restorers followed Mike, his son Connor, and longtime friend Avery Skay as they restored vintage vehicles from Mike's collection. The show followed their passion, perseverance, and the emotional connection Mike had to each car. It premiered on the History Channel in 2019 and quickly made its way to Netflix. Each episode unfolds like a stanza from a grand narrative. The show's younger, More businesslike energy was brought to life by Connor Hull, who frequently clashed with Mike, who saw heart in his father's penchant for spending money on cars that would never make a profit. Reminding Mike that passion isn't enough to pay the bills, Connor kept the business grounded by seeing the numbers. Ashley Skays. His mechanical skills and endearing quirkiness, on the other hand, provided a harmonious balance. Their chemistry was genuine, their disagreements were genuine, and their bond was unbreakable. Avery frequently played the role of peacemaker between the father and son. The trio became a hit. Despite the show's massive viewership, viewers from all over the globe identified with Mike's dream and saw more than just a senile old man with a junk pile. As filming progressed, the reality set in. Mike was getting older, the cars were rusting, and restoring them, even with a TV crew, was a slow and expensive process. The property also required constant maintenance, insurance, taxes, and labor costs, and some cars were beyond repair due to damage from snow, rain, and time. Norman started to push harder, and they needed to make a change. After years of putting it off, Mike finally listed 5 acres of his property, including the shop, for $1.45 million in 2017. His goal wasn't to walk away, but to find someone who could help him share the load, and the reaction was mixed. Some fans were deeply disturbed while others felt relief. Mike was certain that he had made the correct decision. Then, in 2021, the auction took place, the most emotionally taxing event of his life. Hundreds of vehicles were prepared, sorted, and given price tags. Many North American car enthusiasts made the journey to see the vehicles that had been under Mike's care for 2 days. Some were interested in purchasing, while others were merely curious. The cars that had been buried under tarps and snow for so long were finally given a second chance at life as they were driven, towed, or lifted away. Mike observed in silence, occasionally smiling, and other times tearing up. He knew he had to let go, but he couldn't stop the process. The cars had new homes, new hope, and a chance to live again. Exciting new paths awaiting Mike. The auction was a mix of emotions, sad at first, and then liberating afterwards. Mike's strategy evolved. Instead of attempting to preserve everything, he prioritized what was truly important to him, such as the stories that needed telling or the cars that spoke to him. With the debut of Season 5 in 2024, viewers noticed a marked change. The shop had changed as well, and Connor, who was now married and more self-assured, had taken on more of the responsibility for the store's day-to-day operations. Mike, on the other hand, was still very much the same, passionate, emotional, still joking with Avery and arguing with Connor, but he was also wiser, more focused, and, in a sense, more powerful. Operations, he instituted new systems, established budgets, and ensured the company's future. He continued to work side by side with his dad, but the dynamic had shifted from that of father and son to that of partners. Whether he was repairing a gearbox or bringing laughter to everyone's faces, Arby was the team's beating heart. He brought harmony to the group and reminded viewers that it's not about the product, but rather the process. Upon whom you construct it using Rust, viewers tuned in not only for the cars, but also for the emotions, lessons, and bond between the characters. The show evolved into one about second chances, as the number of valley restores continued to grow, and the town of Tappan became a popular destination. Not only for cars, but also for those working behind the scenes. Additionally, Mike considered them. In the long run, along with teaching young mechanics how to fix cars, he also taught them to respect them, telling them things like, "Every ding has a story behind it. Every scratch has a memory." He also became a respected figure in the vintage restoration community through his public speaking engagements, and he believed that cars are more than just transportation. They are time capsules. Toured schools, inspired students to follow their dreams, and warned them not to make the same mistakes he had by admitting his own problems with spending too much and ignoring warning signs. Success isn't everything, as Mike Hall's story demonstrates. It's a real-life lesson about how passion can lead us astray, consume us, and ultimately teach us to let go. At the age of 67, he transformed rust into gold and, more significantly, a jumbled dream into an enduring legacy, proving that it's not about the amount you accumulate, but the amount you share. Mike continues to thrive. He has no idea how many more seasons or cars he will restore, but he is content with neither of those things at the moment because he now approaches his work with purpose. Perhaps the last message is to inspire or to heal. If you're a mechanic, an artist, or simply someone who holds on to too much, you can always change your path, clean up your mess, and start again. Mike's story shows that the hardest part of loving is knowing when to let go. So if you've ever felt stuck in your own rusted field, remember that letting go doesn't have to be a failure. Signify relinquishing. It signifies creating space for what truly counts. If you want to know what my Hall restores next, how each bolt, wheel, and story can bring the past roaring back to life, then you should subscribe now.